This video was sponsored by Kaioken Clothing, and I'll touch more on that at the end of the video. Even if you've never watched My Hero Academia, just from the promotional material alone, you probably know one very simple thing. All Might is that man. He is the #1 hero. He is straight up the best. However, the implications of there even being a #1 hero means that there has to be some sort of system in place or a committee that chooses that sort of thing, right? So if that's the case, what goes into being #1? Is it a matter of power alone? Ability to protect and fight? Maybe even attitude and appearance? It's very possible that such a concept is indicative of a greater social issue within the world of My Hero, but that's not exactly what we're here to talk about today. Today's question is, what does it mean to be behind All Might? Living in his shadow, being the #2 hero. How does that person feel about the spot they're in? Do they even deserve to be #1? See, that question is exactly why the character Endeavor is so important. It would be very easy for someone to be second best and accept that role. However, Enji Todoroki is not the kind of person who could just live that sort of lifestyle. There's no doubt that Endeavor is an extremely powerful and gifted hero. The man became a pro by the time he was 20. Kind of makes me feel like I'm not doing anything with my life, but you know what, that's okay. However, he isn't the type of hero who was doing it for the same reason as someone like Toshinori Yagi, better known as All Might. You see, the thing that separates them at their core is that All Might always wanted to be a hero because he felt the world needed someone to look up to. Becoming #1 was never about glory or fame. It was about the public having a symbol, an icon they could look up to and depend on. No matter how bad the situation was, things would be alright because he was there. However, for Endeavor, it wasn't nearly that noble. He was the complete opposite. Endeavor wanted the #1 spot because of the recognition it would bring him. Maybe he thought that he was so strong, the spot should have rightfully been his. Maybe he thought he worked the hardest for it, and that's why he deserved it. Either way, the reason he couldn't accomplish that goal is because his heart was in the wrong place. Now, becoming a hero for personal gain isn't inherently a sinister or unsavory cause to pursue that career field, because that's what it is. It's a career. Regardless of a hero's intent, they get paid for the work that they do. Even Uraraka wants the job for the purpose of the money. Sure, it isn't for her specifically as much as it is for her family, but still, that's her intent. Not unlike people who might want to become a police officer for the purpose of protecting and serving, or because it pays decently well if you stick with it. All that being said, it isn't that surface level goal that made Endeavor's pursuit of the #1 hero title such a disgusting endeavor. It was the virility and the sickening conviction with which he chased this goal that made him the person his entire family and most fans, myself included for a while, hated so much. Living in the shadow of a man whose optimism likely made him sick, as he effortlessly maintained a position that Enji had worked so hard to achieve, had to have taken some sort of toll on his mental and emotional health over time. I mean, it lasted for decades. You have a man who claims to be a hero, all while showing how loosely that term can apply to someone, given how little regard he seems to have for others around him. Clearly, he cares about saving people in danger, but not the same way as All Might. Service with a smile doesn't exactly mean all that much to him, as he won't even sign an autograph for a fan. Come to think of it, as far as I can remember, I've never seen an Endeavor toy on the show like we've seen for All Might. It's possible that he's ashamed of his public image representing him as such an incorrigible human being because he was denied something that he thought he deserved. Let's talk about how that attitude has trickled down to other people. Endeavor eventually gave up on this goal, accepting that he would never surpass All Might, even without knowing the truth about him. However, that didn't stop him from trying to breed the next generation's #1 hero. He forced himself into a union with a woman named Rei, who possessed a very powerful ice quirk, hoping to create the most powerful child who could one day surpass not only him, but also All Might. Of course, he couldn't get it on the first try, so his first 3 children who didn't have the perfect quirk, half cold, half hot, were seen as failures, like botched experiments. And Enji took no interest in raising them or cultivating their abilities. I mean, what would be the point, since he saw the potential in them? They couldn't surpass him. He's also seen abusing his wife, Rei, who was far from happy in their domestic situation. Did Enji care about this? Of course not. Her only purpose was to birth the perfect child, and when she finally did, in the form of Shoto, she grew to hate him. Enji abused and tortured his wife so severely that she hated her own son for no other reason then he reminded her too much of the monster who made her life a living hell for all those long years. All this would, of course, make Endeavor sound like an irredeemable monster who stood no chance at a redemption, right? Well, maybe not. Let's talk about the last season and a half regarding him. Unbeknownst to Endeavor for 5 years, his rival, the man who stood in his way, All Might, whom he saw as an insurmountable obstacle, was essentially crippled and was unable to perform hero work at the level that he used to. In fact, if number 1 was decided by some sort of fight between the two of them, Endeavor could have easily taken the spot from him by the time the show starts. However, this is a secret that was kept from mostly everyone, including Endeavor. So on that fateful day, when All Might revealed his true form to the world in that battle against All For One that was forced to retire, this left Endeavor as the de facto number 1 hero. This turn of events was something that he saw as unacceptable. Not only had he been in the shadow of someone who'd been reduced to a fraction of his former self, but he was also gifted something that he'd spent his whole life working for. Of course he wanted the number 1 hero title, but not like this. He wanted it fairly, he wanted to earn it. This was a total system shock for NG, and possibly the wake-up call he needed. Upon their first time meeting since that day, Endeavor asked All Might what it meant to be a symbol. I see this as the second step toward Endeavor finally growing up and seeing beyond ranks. He recognizes that now that he landed where he always wanted to be, for better or for worse, All Might left some pretty big shoes to fill. And with that comes a level of responsibility that Endeavor has no choice but to accept. But Toxic, I hear you ask. You said that's the second one. Well, what's the first? The first was when the truth about All Might was shown to Endeavor firsthand. Before him stood a weak, frail shell of a man who had always been better than him, who won a competition he didn't even know he was in. Endeavor had a moment of self-reflection in that instance. He realized that in spite of his overall weakened state and inability to operate at peak, All Might was still number 1 because he deserved it. He'd been pushing himself beyond his limits, disregarding his own health and well-being time and time again for the sake of the job, because nothing mattered more to him than being the symbol of peace he'd always set out to be. The symbol of peace he swore to his master that he would become. In this moment, Endeavor swallowed his pride and encouraged All Might to show them why he was number 1, why he was better. And ever since then, Endeavor started to see the harsh reality of his actions. The lives that he created and then proceeded to destroy. He'd inadvertently started to even create a clone of himself in Shoto who hated him so much, he kind of turned into him in his own way. And maybe he would have never found his way back had it not been for Deku. I feel that All Might is just as important to Endeavor's growth as a character as Deku was for Shoto. In all, Endeavor is definitely a disgusting human being who has done some unforgivable things. He knows that as well as we do, but it's that sordid history of his that gives us the opportunity to watch some real character work be done with him. There's no telling where he might end up. Although as the show continues, I look forward to seeing what kind of man and hero Endeavor ends up being. After that fight with the Nomu, it's clear that he's already a different man than he once was. Here's to the best character in the show. Howdy Hoyo, it's Corporate Boyo, and this video, as I said before, is sponsored by Kaioken Clothing. And as you can see here, they've got not only Naruto merch and Dragon Ball merch, but they've also got My Hero merch. They got stuff for Deku, Bakugo, Todoroki, and since masks are in fashion right about now, why don't you go ahead and pick yourself up one of those? Go ahead and click that link down there in the description and use code JUTSU, not my code in particular, but it will get you a discount, and there's free shipping in the US and the UK, so you will only be paying for the product. And I mean, it's already pretty cheap, so go ahead and check it out. Thanks.